Good evening, Mr. Saurabh.
Hello.
First of all, welcome and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. My first question is about your perception on the development of knowledge economy in African countries.
I really feel it's a very exciting time for the African countries to shape and make sure that their voice is heard loud and clear uh, in making sure that African nations actually come up as leading knowledge economy, uh, especially the part where now, since it's less to do with the traditional economic machines where Africa was in the back seat. Now, when it's about economies relying more on knowledge infrastructures, making sure that technology has a big role to play in this, here is a chance where they can make sure their voice is heard as fast as possible. So we at Mahatma Gandhi Institute, which is a Tier 1 UNESCO research institute, we focus a lot on artificial intelligence and role of technology in K-12 education. How education can empower students to make sure that they are ready for this knowledge economy where knowledge competencies are at core. Here is a chance where the 1 billion population has already seen and is kind of saturated. And rest means now whatever technology and application come with, there is a 6 billion population gap which need a different kind of initiative, which is what developing countries like India, Southeast Asia, Africa also, it needs to come from here because they understand what's actually required over here. So here's a very exciting chance for, but what that would surely require is sharing insights, making sure that the learnings which happen in India do not stay in India, because that can help in Africa. Things which come on over here and are helping people here, that actually does translate across the world. And that is something which, when indigenously comes from your nation, it understands those nuances and is able to scale better if architected well.
According to you, what are the priorities that African countries need to implement in order to succeed in this challenge?
Sure. So I think investing in infrastructure, and especially for the policymakers and the, again, I would keep on stressing on the need of quality education and making sure that children of today who are going to shape up what's happening in future, they start understanding how to develop knowledge competency. And when I say about knowledge competency, I'm not just talking about the intellectual intelligence, I'm also talking about emotional intelligence. And that's an opportunity which I feel we have here. So in terms of priority, to make sure that what we learn is a bit less important than how we learn. Because, like, for example, I have a technology background. By the time you graduate on a particular technology, it's already become obsolete. So, but if you get your basics right, things like algorithm, things like which are the framework of things and how you learn and pick up new concepts, that's going to become more and more important. So two things, if I can. One is investing in technology infrastructure, and the second, making sure that technology learning, and especially how you learn, leveraging technological tools, that's embedded in the education systems. So these two things I really think would go a very long way if it can become a priority for the government.
So what role should private and public actors play in order to develop collective intelligence as a main pillar for knowledge economy?
Here it gets a bit tricky because previously the notion has been that always exclude for-profit private organizations because they always have profit at the core of it. And I think it's somewhat true also for private technology players. But that's why there's a CTO at UNESCO MGIEP, because technology is a tool. How we use it is very important. And how we believe is you can rein in these private players. You can make sure that the collaboration and sharing of the insights is built into the DNA of the policy frameworks which we bring in. But without getting a buy-in from private players, it's going to be next to impossible to scale and share these insights, because they are, means it's Google's, it's Facebook's, it's not national technology products which we all are using, but we have become addicted to private players. If you can leverage those tools and make sure that they are having to comply by constructs which are towards building the competencies and are serving not just national interests, but human interests, and that I really feel they can, it can go a long way.
Last question is maybe about, maybe a word about your participation here in Morocco Today Forum.
Sure. No, I'm extremely excited and extremely honored to be invited to the 4th edition of MTF. I'm representing UNESCO MGIEP, which is, as I mentioned, it's a Tier 1 UNESCO research institute. Excited to learn more and more about what's happening over here, because as I mentioned, the top 1 billion users, economy, that's something which is done. Now it's the rest of 6 billion where the voice needs to come in from. I work in the field of artificial intelligence and machine learning, which requires data set to be as diverse as possible. So right now there is only one kind of voice in the digital frame. Children in India and Africa there are such a huge number which have not made even a single digital footprint. Time for them to come on board, because if they are not in the technology space, if they do not make their footprints, their voice is not heard, unfortunately.